Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast with Jen and Lou. And I am Lou, a soul astrologer, author of 2 astrology books, A Complete Guide to Astrology and Modern Astrology, and a shamanic practitioner, and I help clients break free of the chains that bind. Jen.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Duchen, Akashic mentor, soul guide, teacher, author, creator of the illuminating journey cards, global guardian of the Akashic records, guiding my clients to embody their worth.
And today we are diving straight into the Gemini lunar eclipse. Eclipse season is here. And this lunar eclipse is a full moon eclipse. Lunar eclipse means it's full moon. Solar eclipse means it's a new moon. It's at 8 degrees and 38 minutes of Gemini, the moon, and the sun opposite at 8 degrees and 38 minutes of Sagittarius. Because it's an eclipse, that means it's close to the lunar nodes. This is a partial lunar eclipse because the moon and the sun are quite far from the nodes, so we'll talk more about that. The moon itself is not actually aspecting many things, but there's a lot of other stuff going on that we will talk about. There's Neptune stations direct the day before this eclipse at 18 degrees and 9 minutes of Pisces. We also have Pluto and Eris heading towards the third and middle of their exact squares at 23 degrees of Capricorn and Aries. And Juno is also at 23 degrees, so we'll talk about that too. And there's other things we're going to talk about as well. There's a lot around 27 degrees that we'll be talking about as we move through this. So, Jen, do you want to dive in first? Oh, shall we do cards first?
Cards. Yes, let's do cards.
Yes, you do your card first.
All right. So for this lunar eclipse or partial lunar eclipse, the card that came up from the illuminating journey cards is the 22. So I find that fascinating. We have that master number 22, and this card always makes me think about opportunity, the idea of moving towards what we desire as opposed to what we think we're supposed to do, having the bridge and the path, and then the background. For those who can't see, there are hills and waterfalls and kind of temples and castles and all kinds of things that are in the space, doves. There's all of this promise of peace, of beauty, of enlightenment, if you will, but it happens through choice, through taking the path, going under the bridge, and finding that sense of self that is so essential. To find peace is to find yourself, to follow your heart and your truth, as opposed to what others dictate or what looks like the right way, right? So it's following or forging your own path.
So I think we had this card like maybe 2 podcasts ago too, so it's come up again. I'm sure we did. And it always seems very lush beyond that bridge. Yeah, very abundant. So I find it also interesting that there's the birds in there, because Gemini is an air sign and air signs are associated with birds and the messenger. And so that's very interesting too. And it's about thought patterns as well, you know.
Right. There's a full moon.
Oh yes, full moon at the top there. Yeah.
This kind of energetic kind of thing, which could also relate to Gemini, or this idea of reaching up, or this crystalline energy.
Well, and the 2 temples too, isn't it?
Right, 2 temples, and the 22, very much the Gemini, which is the 4, adds up to the 4, but that 22 is also that kind of energy of being exposed to what else is there, what else is in our mind, what else is possible, what else are we dreaming of that we want to connect to and make real.
Mm. And my card is the number 20, so more twos. So Jen kind of had the 2020 with the two twos, and I have 20. So so we're coming to an end of, what's been an incredible year in so many ways. And we both pick cards like that. But my card is called the Aeon. And an Aeon, according to Webster's dictionary, is that state which represents a long, indefinite period of time. And I find that really interesting as we're moving into the age of Aquarius. Right after this eclipse season, we have what's called the Great Mutation, with Jupiter and Saturn meeting at zero Aquarius, which will herald 200 years of air great conjunctions, shifting from Earth to a whole different thing, and the air again being of the mind. Gemini North Node, lunar eclipse being about changing our perceptions, and this card really is all about using discernment, stepping out above, taking the bigger view, and looking kind of more long term rather than getting caught up in the detail. It's got that big snake arch around it, which is very Leo kind of thing. It's got an egg shape in the middle. It's got the goddess Isis in there. Um, Reminds us to give creative power, to give birth to new forms. Then we've got floating fetuses. So there's a lot of rebirth energy in this. This card, to me, is telling me we are entering this new age, to be quite honest. And I really do think we are finally. We've been
Mm.
on the verge of it for so many years because
Right.
ages do not come overnight. So,
Right.
but this is
Or
about
just
good judgment too. And there's a brilliant quote with this in the book that I use for these cards by Anjali Zarian. She says, "Learn to look with an equal eye upon all beings, seeing the one self in all." And that's from Bhagavatam Perennial Philosophy. So
mm, beautiful.
yeah.
What strikes me as so interesting about your card and mine too is this: they both have an arch,
Oh
right?
yeah. Mhm.
And what's interesting is it's both, to me, about this idea of entering a space that one has dreamed of, or going into the space of the imagination and what is juicy and luscious that
Mm.
wants to be birthed, as opposed to being on the exterior or waiting to enter. So I find that interesting. Even though the colors aren't the same, there is a
Shape
similar
shapes
kind
this.
of message in that, the lushness is about entering the space and daring to kind
Mm.
of swim with your imagination and being willing to really dive into what calls you, as opposed to uh, what you think you're supposed to do. And my eye is struck by this like temple here, that is that yellow color that you have
Yes.
in
Yeah.
the center of that card, kind of that egg. So yeah, it's
And
fascinating.
this similar shape that you uh, talked about is more on my card, but on yours a little bit too, is actually the Leo symbol, which of course is the opposite to Aquarius. So we can't have the age of Aquarius without having Leo qualities as well, because polarities have to be integrated. And that's a very creative, following your heart kind of sign too. So that,
Mhm. Mm,
all that comes in together. Yeah.
right. And this one has the symbol of the what do they call that?
Oh, yeah.
Not, I think it's the Cadius or the other one. Anyway, it's about healing, right? Heal thyself, and
It's
that's
very
the
similar to
energy,
the Hygeia symbol. Yeah.
right? And this is about healing, right? This time we're in is very much about healing,
Yeah.
healing ourselves, healing from the kind
Mm.
of diseases. If you think about the mind, how our minds have been trapped in disease, right, for so long.
Yeah.
Um, and our thought patterns that have been caught up. And just even that thing with Neptune, right? That whole idea of the illusion, disillusion, and Neptune going forward with this idea of us being in the illusion of we're trapped and we can't do what we want to do. And, we're being held back and others are controlling us. And this kind of movement forward going, are you really trapped? Like,
Yeah.
what else can you think about? What else can you do? How else can you live in this world?
And the age of Pisces, the astrological ages have been 2000 years, by the way. So, the
Right.
age of Pisces that we're leaving, it had its amazing qualities too. But of course, as we're moving out of that into a new age, the what we want to leave behind is being highlighted. So yeah, we've been kind of stuck in this kind of goo of Capricorn kind of, sorry, Pisces kind of chaos energy for a while, and now we're coming out into air and fire, which is like new inventions, new ideas, being very creative, and you can create your own stuff too. So yeah.
Right. And how fascinating that with the end of this kind of Piscean influence, that Neptune goes,
Mm.
stations to go forward the day before this eclipse, right, which is opening the doorway to a new phase,
Yeah.
besides the eclipse being in the eclipse season. So that's really fascinating.
It really is. Yeah. I really think it's a kind of a crescendo at this point. I've talked about it quite a lot to my members, but all the stories of all this chaos are kind of starting to come together, reach end of cycles, start new cycles, and we're not through it yet by any means. We're definitely kind of on the outer slope, I think. We have two more Pluto Eris squares to go after the one on December the 10th, towards the end of next year. And, these things take a while to settle down and settle in. But I really feel huge optimism, this Sagittarius, with all the eclipses coming in my Sagittarius and Gemini moon. But I really feel this shift. And it kind of came after the Scorpio new moon, really, this sense of things are starting to move, things are really starting to change, and move forward. So I don't know about you, Jen, if you sense the same.
Right. Yes. Actually, before the Scorpio, well, I've sensed, for me anyway, or the energy or the messages I've been getting is this gathering of speed in a sense, right? So 2020 is a 4. It's all about creating this foundation, something new, right? But it's a foundation that's based on integrity and leanness. And so there's been this gathering momentum of, here's our opportunities to do things, think things, break through,
Mm.
etc. And absolutely, the week before, actually, that moon, I had I was very tired the weekend before and got the download that this was like the ending, like this weekend. And it was a lot of people were very tired. So a lot of people being very tired. And the instruction that I got from the records was that this was kind of the ending of old energy. So then, next week was the new moon. And so this complete, like, I just felt like even before, as it was coming, I could feel this sense like, wow, I just feel like everything's just going to work out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, that's how I feel. Well, I am kind of a Pollyanna, or people may call me a Pollyanna, although I personally love Pollyanna, so I don't have a problem with her at all. But um, that was one of my favorite movies when I was a little girl, Pollyanna. I loved how she looked at the world through the prism, and that there was that opportunity, and even reminds me of that my card, the 22, that kind of prism that you look through. And so, yes, I do believe that there is kind of like, even like when you were talking, Lou, this idea of all the threads that we've been waiting to fall in place are now kind of starting to take their shape. So we've moved out of kind of the of being in that place of we're not sure what's happening, and oh, what are we supposed to do, to oh, I got it, I know what I have to do, I know what's happening, I know what I need to visualize, and it's become much more concrete, which I think is why we feel more positive, because we're like, oh, I can take action, as opposed to I'm stuck here, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. And we're talking great swathes of time here. So, I think we're in for a good another 4 years of unfolding, but we're kind of past the real crux of the absolute chaos, I think. So, um,
Right.
it doesn't mean there won't be any more. And
Right. We'll still feel chaos, right? We just have passed the kind of build up. And that's the interesting thing that people need to pay attention to, right? Is that just because we know we're in this other phase doesn't mean that we aren't going to have experiences of chaos.
exactly, exactly. And before Jen talks about the numbers of the degrees on this, I do want to mention that we're in this real pattern that I hadn't noticed on the last two podcasts. But we had the 23-degree Libra new moon, then the 23 Scorpio new moon, but we actually have six new moons at 23 degrees coming up, ending in March, and six full moons at 8 degrees, apart from the January one that just slips over into 9 degrees, but I'm going to say it's in the same pattern. So we have a series of six lunar new and full moons, all at the same numbers that are really going to kind of emphasize these numbers. So Jen's going to kind of give you
Right.
some information about those numbers.
Right. And I just wanted to also kind of what came to mind when you're talking was last year towards the end of last year, we had I don't remember the degrees. I think they were in the fours, 20 and 4, something like that.
We
That
were.
was happening from November through April,
Mhm.
of the new moons all being 4 something, and the full moons being 20. I don't remember the degree, but I remember there was that pattern that was happening.
It was 4 and 20. You're right. I'm just looking.
Ah, so funny. 4 and 20. It's like that
Yeah,
nursery rhyme. 4 and 20 something's over.
blackbirds. 4 and 20 blackbirds.
And that's of course our numbers for this year that we're in, 4 and 20. So that's really interesting. So the numbers we have, 8 and 23, of course we don't have those numbers, but they are very significant in the path that we're taking, in terms of 8 being the number of leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm talking about this idea that uh, we accept that we are in charge of our own leadership and that we lead the way we want to live. So taking the high view, seeing what else there is, not getting stuck in what's around us, but looking at the bigger picture, but also being able to take action, being persistent, and not getting hooked into obstacles, which is what a lot of us tend to do. Like, what's wrong with this picture? But really being more focused on how do I get where I need to go, and not being so fascinated by obstacles. So that's one part. And then the 23, as we've mentioned many times, that the 23 is a significant number. Lou has her thing that she talks about. There's all different reasons why 23 is so powerful, but in numerology, considered the strongest number for many reasons, and obviously that is why it is used in so many different ways. Our 23 chromosomes, etc., that Lou has talked about and probably will talk about. Uh, but the significant thing here is 23, besides being the 2 and 3, the prime numbers, 1, 2, and 3, so 2 and 3, which add up to 5. So 5 being the number for next year, the universal number, is 5 is about freedom and movement, and understanding the freedom comes from accepting responsibility for our own actions and choices. And this is what the 4 year has been about, learning to be responsible, or going, oh, this is up to me. I get to do what I think is important. My actions matter. And then taking it to the next level. So this royal line of numbers is considered so powerful because it is about courage. It is about the willingness to connect to your heart, to live from that intensity or passion in your heart, as opposed to toning it down, which many of us have done. We've toned down our desire, our passion. And that again is that Leo energy. When we're moving into Aquarius, just thinking about what will help us to bring about a balanced new age is by being aware of our desires, but not letting them consume the where we're going. So that balance of heat and coolness that's so important. And really understanding that 23 is about life. It is about freedom and the breath that we bring into life. So those are super important of understanding that this is about the motion. A 5 is open on both sides. It moves, it's open to new ideas, it's willing to not only take what it has been, but move into this moment, into the present moment. So we can certainly talk more about that on our special we're having.
Yes. We'll give a little plug for that before I say any more about the 23. Jen and I are offering a free overview call for 2021. Full details can be found on our Instagram bio or on our Facebook page. It's on the 25th at 11 a.m. Pacific, which is 2 p.m. Eastern. And, if you come and register for it, you'll just get a simple Zoom registration. It's completely free. You can either attend live or I'll email the recording out to you so you can be sure not to miss it. So come and sign up for that and enjoy finding out what 2021 brings. So back to 23s. On this of course is a full moon at 8 degrees, but we do have Pluto, Eris and Juno at 23 degrees on this full moon, so it's still a significant number on the full moon. 23 is believed by the Discordians who who worship the goddess Eris to be her number. And it's interesting that she is at 23 degrees of Aries, making these 5 squares to Pluto as we go through this tremendously chaotic time of transformation into the new age. Interestingly, she was at 23 degrees of Aries when Columbus is supposed to have discovered America, which he landed in a completely different place, really, but it's still significant because it's celebrated in the USA. So that's why, there's a multitude of reasons why the chaos has been very centered in the USA. But of course, that ripples out to the whole world. But interestingly, as well, at 23 degrees, we have Juno at 23 degrees Scorpio, which is the degree of the last new moon on this full moon. And Juno is a really interesting asteroid. These asteroids and dwarf planets are becoming more in our consciousness as all this time, as we go through this shift into the new age. And Juno, she's generally thought of as the marriage asteroid, but I think she's so much more. I think she's our sacred marriage to each other in general. She indicates that we are all connected. In mythology, the goddess Juno, she represented the rights of women, children, the marginalized, which Eris also is an outsider. She's kind of the uninvited kind of person. So we've got this energy of the people, the marginalized, the forgotten ones, all being brought into this full moon in big ways, and with Pluto, the god of transformation and death and rebirth, he's there kind of saying it's time for them to rise up. And I don't mean rise up in, although I did talk about Eris with her pitchfork this morning in my post, because she is quite a warrior kind of energy. But it really is, you know, there's so many indicators that kind of the structures of our patriarchal society are collapsing, and we have the potential to head to a more egalitarian society as we enter this age of Aquarius. So,
Right. And I think too, it's not to say that one necessarily welcomes the idea of people going out there with pitchforks or anger or any of those things or high energy of opinion. But however, this is a necessary part of process. Like, we do need to hold people accountable. We do need to have boundaries. We do need to be tough sometimes. And this is the time. Like, we can just look at the structures of political, etc., or maybe even the workplace,
mhm,
how those in charge have continued to kind of pull on the vehicle of power and get everyone to do their bidding.
mhm,
And in order to change, those people, and we've talked about it, not going to go, oh, you don't like this? Okay, here, I'm going to let you do it. So there is going to be a necessary war of sorts, or fight, or standing up. I like to talk about it being something we stand up for as opposed to uh, anything else, because it helps us understand what we're doing is we're standing up for ourselves. We're taking back what is ours. We are reconstituting our beliefs, what is valuable to us, what is necessary to us. And the way we do this is by having a lot of things taken away from us,
mhm,
about getting into very lean times, which we are, all of the experiences we're having now making us what we might call angry, but it's part of that waking up. We wake up often when we're angry or we have emotion around it. And so learning how to use the emotion so that we're not reacting, but we're choosing how we're going to use it. That's strategic. That's the energy of Athena, which is so important. We need to be strategic. And a lot of the female energies that are coming into play are very strategic. And so this is part of it, that woman, or the energy of whatever you want to call it, female, or that part of us, that intuitive side of us that's highly strategic, highly imaginative, highly aware, even tapping into that eight, that sense of leadership, is about knowing the timing and having a strategy and holding the vision about what we're doing and where we're going, instead of just madly going around just doing things just because we feel like it or it
mhm.
feels good. It's like, let's be strategic. And it makes me think of that woman in Georgia, Stacey Abrams.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
her, she's a great example of this type of energy I'm talking about, because we can see how her strategy has worked.
Yeah.
When her election was stolen from her, she may have been very angry, but she chose to, and rightfully so, but she chose to win by going out and getting people. Like, I think she get like 90,000 people registered to vote,
Wow.
and so impacting people and
Yeah.
life and the things she believes in. And so not just like, this is about me, but actually doing this in that egalitarian way that benefits her and all of us, because we all then are pulled into this energy of, we're all pulling the chariot towards the strategy we believe in. And so those are great examples of how we do this. And we see the exact opposite with the patriarchy, and
Oh,
it's like falling apart because everything is being exposed. However, it's not enough that it is exposed. We actually have to hold their feet to the fire, right? We have to
yeah.
make them accountable, not just lie back and go, oh, there's nothing we can do. Look, this is what they're doing. It's like, no, we have to have a strategy. And that's why we need leadership, right?
And
And so, go
is
ahead.
there's so many examples of this, you know, this I call it pitchfork energy, but it is strategic pitchfork energy. You know, the Justice Democrats in the USA, they've got new, AOC. She was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was one of them. There's all the squad, as they call them. Cori Bush is a new member. There's some new ones coming in. They're all ordinary people. If you've not heard of Cori Bush, look her up, Cori. But she was filming herself yesterday going to a thrift store to buy clothes suitable to be in Congress with, because she doesn't have the money. This is the ordinary people coming in to change things. Like
Right.
Stacey.
Which
Yeah,
is such a key thing, because not only are they ordinary people, but they know how to use Instagram and cameras and all of these things that those old fuddy-duddies don't know how to use. And they're bringing us with them. They're helping us to understand things and recognize the power of the people,
yeah.
which is so important. And that's what eclipses are about, the power of the people, the moon, etc. So that's
Gemini is the people too. It's
right,
it,
right.
and it's community. It's coming together with community, and with the South Node being in Sagittarius, with the Sun in Sagittarius on the full moon, that's the releasing end. That's releasing the old beliefs and old dogmas of how it should look. Um, we've also got Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, so the ruler of the moon itself, at 27 degrees of Scorpio, um, close to that Juno that I mentioned, but also in an exact square to Pallas Athena, the wise strategist again. So when Mercury is communication and voice and ideas and mind, so we've got that mental energy again of think how we're going to do this. Okay. Yeah.
Right, and that's really so important. I did want to talk about the numbers, besides the 23 and 8, is just the numbers of the day. The 8, of course, the moon and sun at 8 degrees, 37 minutes. So that's a 9 together when you add it up, because 37 is 1. So the 9 is really important in this eclipse, because we have this on the 30th, the day. So that's a 3. It's an emotional number. It's about connecting to our own desires. But the universal date is an 18, which is a 9, which is about ending. And I call this the number of the ego, kind of ending the ego, or the part of the ego that is often makes us forget strategy, right? So we get so involved in our own feelings and what we want to do to somebody else that has done something to us, that it's really important to understand that when we release that energy of blame and shame and all of that, and we get focused on what the big vision is, it changes everything. The other thing that's fascinating is, besides the sun and moon being that leadership moving into endings, and the 9 being not just about endings or breaking down of the kind of illusion that we can't be who we are, we can't play ourselves in the world, is also that connection to each other, that we are all one, that there is forgiveness and compassion and all of these things available to us when we go into the emotional component of what actually activates us. So that's a fascinating kind of idea when we think about this energy, and remembering that November is a 15 universal month. So we have a 6, we have 3, 6, and 9 all activated. So this is interesting. We have 3, 6, and 9, which are all the emotional numbers activated. And then we have the 2, 4, and 8 activated, because we're in 2020. So we have the 2 and the 4, and then we have the 8. So the 2, 4, 8 and the 3, 6, 9 all activated. So it's the manifestation of our emotional security or certainty going forward, breaking away from the old idea that somehow we've been imprisoned, which is part of that Piscean age, the imprisoning and this kind of awakening into this energy. We are not prisoners. We have so much that's available to us, and we have all of these elements working towards it. And then we have all of those numbers at, well, first of all, Neptune at 18,
At
which, I mean, it just can't be more perfect than that, right?
9:09.
Right.
9
All
minutes.
right.
Yeah, so
Exactly. So again, that reminder, this is the ending. We're breaking free of that kind of feeling of being imprisoned, that we can't do anything, that we're helpless, the illusion, the disillusion, and coming out of it, if we choose, right? Out of that, what do you want to call those things? Addiction, out of addiction of being trapped. And then of course, uh, Mercury at 27, which is a 9.
mhm.
And what else do we have? We also have
Palace of
Palestina at the 9, um,
Sedna at the 9.
Edna, right? So this is really interesting that this 9 is pushing us, the strategy is pushing us to realize, instead of making ourselves too small or too big, just knowing we are equal and all powerful, in the sense that all of us are equal and we have equal opportunity to be heard, as proof by what you were talking about, AOC, and just these ordinary people having a desire and finding their way into places of power and making a difference.
Yeah. And, I want to mention there's a couple of ones as well. So we also have the new beginnings, in there, and, Jen's the numerologist, not me. But, one recent addition to my chart makeup is Haumea, and she has been being squared by all the Capricorn energy as well, and is going to be squared over the next few months, couple of years, if you like. And she is rebirth. She's fertility and birth. And in Libra, she's over there at 28 degrees of Libra, and she keeps being activated. But we also have the only, apart from the moon, Venus was the only female named energy in our cosmos until we discovered all the asteroids and dwarf planets. And she's at 1 degree, well, 10 degrees of Scorpio, so a one there too. So we have some new beginnings there as well. So endings and beginnings. It's yeah.
Right, which is interesting because they're all female energies,
Mhm.
right? And these are the endings, there are some female, but it's a lot of the older energies, in the sense of shifting from kind of this more rigid thing into this more open, compassionate energy where we want to have new beginnings.
Mm,
So it's like that fire of, we talked about that fire of Leo moving, or awakening the warmth in the heart, even though the mind is very clear.
mhm.
So, having that is such a great combination, I think,
Really.
in living.
I mean, Saturn is at 28 too, but Saturn's. I have this big theory. Saturn rules Capricorn. There's no doubt about that. And Saturn has always been talked about as a male energy, through the patriarchy, and really since the beginning of astrology. But Saturn rules Capricorn, which is actually a yin or night or earth female energy. So Haumea is exactly square to Saturn in Capricorn on this, and Saturn is moving forward to move into Aquarius to start all this off. Really, it's almost like Haumea, the goddess of birth, is saying, rebirth yourself. Saturn, there's so many things I could say about Saturn. There was all these occultations last year in 2019, so mini eclipses of Saturn right throughout the year. It's like we're being asked to reclaim like the crone energy of Saturn, rather than this belief that it all has to be this rigid, hard patriarchal energy. I think the energy itself, we are being asked to feel it differently, to see it differently.
Mm. Yeah, right. It was funny when you were going into Billy. I thought you were going to go Billy Goat. That was really funny. Billy Goat. But being the sea goat, but also Saturn is the ancient ruler of Aquarius. So, what
Yes.
better way to move into this new age with to me, even though Saturn has feminine energy, there is also the masculine that needs to be reawoken, the divine masculine, which, patriarchy has not been the divine masculine in any way, shape, or form. That has all been sublimated. So here is Saturn kind of reclaiming its divine nature in the pool of divinity, the pool of all of this female energy, rebirthing at that 28, bringing in that sense of, divine masculine is definitely in balance with its divine feminine. There is no doubt, right?
Well, it's to my mind, it's a continuum. It's not two separate things. It's
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's what all of this is about. It's about this idea, even the number 6, which is activated all through November 6, which is the number of the, um, Hieros Gammas, the male female that recognizes, or the intuition and the action, that it's all one. We're not separate. And all of the patriarchy has been about separating things so that some people could have all the power. And when you bring it all back and you go, well, no, we all have power, right? And we're all seeing that in the world. That's so fascinating. And the other part is the nodes are at 19. So that's a 1 too, right? So it's that energy, and it's with the 9. So it's that energy of, we're moving away from organized religion, which is so interesting when you think about the Piscean age was ruled by religion. And the idea of that, and that's basically what they did. They took all the ideas and said, no, we're going to put it under this one God, and we're going to be the people who decide what God said and what it all means. Putting fear into people, right? So that whole thing, how interesting that is, like, now with the nodes being activated, of course, because of the eclipse, but also because of the 19, that idea, like letting go of the beliefs that have been bound.
And also, speaking of the nodes being at 19 degrees, the nodes move backwards through the signs. So far, since the nodes have been in Gemini and Sagittarius, they've been at the last 10 degrees of each sign. So now they've moved into the middle 10 degrees. And there's a thing in astrology called decans or decanates, which divides each sign up into the 10 degrees of the 30 degrees. And this middle decan of Gemini is actually the Aquarius decan. So, so the nodes,
So funny.
I know. So the nodes have moved back into the energy of Aquarius and Gemini, really for these eclipses, and so there's another sign of all these stories kind of coming together. Everything keeps pointing to a pattern, to my mind.
Right. And it's so interesting that we have, like, Venus, which is the only female that was kind of representative in the field before, right?
Mhm.
She's at that 10, that kind of new beginning, which is also about manifestation. And then Saturn, also, the old father time, this energy of, is it male, is it female, like that, fullness of, like, yeah, I'm stepping back into my wholeness, into my masculine, feminine wholeness. It's just fascinating. And then with the nodes, just thinking about how, in our world, religion has, or kind of this set belief has controlled how we've lived, right, for at least the last, for the whole Piscean age, the last 2,600 years, and of course beyond that. But where it was feeding our brains, and now we're moving in the opposite direction, where our imagination gets to feed the belief.
Yeah.
So it's like breaking ties with this kind of rigidity of belief, like you can only fit into this place. And I've noticed that, even with myself and with a lot of my clients, a lot of working with clients that are coming with this rigidity of belief that they're trying to break through, because they're like, oh, this is so painful, and why do I feel like this, right? And being able to break through that energy, because it has imprisoned us. It has made us feel like, oh, I can't do this. Like when you think about how afraid we are to do things because somebody will ostracize us. Again, that Eris thing, will be the outsider. or I won't get approval, I won't get love, and it's all total bullshit, right? But we still are moved by it, right? We're controlled by it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just another quick ad break, as it were. I'd like to mention not only our free call, but our Patreon. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/weirdly magical. For just $3 a month, you can support the running of this podcast and support our work. And each podcast episode, we also do a separate recording of card pulls for Patreons only. So please consider supporting our work. So back to the lunation. I find this is just so amazing. I also find it quite interesting that Jupiter and Pallas Athena and Saturn are at 26, 27, 28 degrees. They're all kind of lined up, and they're all going to march into Aquarius right after this, starting with Pallas Athena. She will pass Saturn, then Jupiter, then Saturn, and they'll all converge at the beginning of Aquarius, with Pallas Athena, the wise owl. For those watching on YouTube, you can see the owl behind me. She's kind of my goddess, and she's, as we said, the strategist, and she is actually considered to be a bit of not, if not the ruler, very associated with Aquarius. She's the astrologer's asteroid, interestingly, as well. And so we're moving into this age as these three march in after this full moon and into December, where we start to see the bigger pictures, going back to the card I pulled, the Aeon, where we start to see patterns. We start to see what we need to do. We start to see what needs deconstructing and what needs taking apart. And I absolutely love that they're all lined up in like soldiers in a row at the moment. And then Pallas Athena is going to lead the charge afterwards.
Right. Pulling ahead, and how interesting that she's the one that enters first,
Mhm.
right? And that's the not only the strategist, which makes sense, but also the one who knows the bigger picture, right? The visionary, the one who will look and go, I'm setting the stage for the next phase. And then comes Jupiter, which is then bringing the expansion. And then comes Saturn, which is then, okay, now we start to lay down the foundation, right?
Yeah.
It's that, and there's threes, right? That thing about the three that is so interesting, of course, the triumvirate, the very important part of being human
Mhm.
and being on Earth is the number three, and it is represented today because we in this eclipse, it's on the 30th,
Yeah.
right? So that's that expansive three, that very creative. It's a number that it's showing up in the 23. It will be important next year because we have a 21, which is a three. And I think we also have some threes.
Ceres is at 3
Ceres,
degrees.
that's right.
Yeah.
So interesting. So Ceres, the harvest, the kind of energy of the bringing or springing into this idea of what are we birthing, because this is the time we actually seed, is in the winter. If you're in the northern hemisphere, we're seeding in the winter, not in the spring, right? Because this is the time to strategize, is when it is cold. And of course, if you're on the northeast, southern hemisphere, you're in a different rotation.
Mm.
But thinking about strategy, right, regardless, because our year ends. And so we need strategy for the next year. We look back, we go, what have we done this year? What is it? What have we learned? What do we need to take forward? And so many of us have learned so much this year from being in this crazy experience of being shifted, mutated, and now we're moving into this great mutation. So what strategy and what hope and what vision are we going to put into this pool of
Mm.
the zero, the new, totally, pre new beginnings?
One thing I find really interesting, and I know it freaks some people out, it doesn't me, it just seems like to fit with the astrology, is these vaccines that the Pfizer and Moderna ones, they're called mRNA vaccines or RNA vaccines, and they actually alter DNA. So they take DNA from the virus and put it in you. And a lot of people go, oh, but I have friends who are on the trials, and the science is really good apparently. But that fits so much with all these 23s, with the Age of Aquarius. It's a completely new form of vaccine that could change everything for us. Um, whether you believe in it or not, that's just how it is. So it's like,
Right, right. I mean, so much is changing, and that's the thing that this virus, certainly from what I've heard from the Akashic records, that this virus is part of our change, right? It's changing because as we go forward, we will in future breathe differently.
yeah.
We will be connected differently. Our bodies and our way of processing will be different. So, yeah, whether you're with it or for it or unsure about it, the point is we are moving into an age of technology, of innovation, of breaking through the rigidity of how emotions have kept us trapped. Now, I think our emotions are super important,
Mhm.
but what we've been talking about is that so much of our emotions are bullshit. Like we're just caught up in a little trap about a story we're telling ourselves, and it's all tied into the past.
Yeah.
And now we have to go, well, is that really true? And do I need it going forward?
Yeah.
Right. So we can be in fear, try to hold the past back. And I was noticing that Mars is at 16 degrees, of course, in Aries. So very much, we've been talking about passion and all of this stuff that is often triggered by the arrow of Mars and the focus. And that's 17, 16 is a 7, which is about looking to the past to change the present, change our actions in the present so that we can actually change the future. And that's very Aquarian, right?
Yep. Yeah.
As well, right?
Because
Because
Aquarius, with Aquarius having the two rulers, Saturn and Uranus, it's a very eclectic mix of ancient and futuristic. So yeah, I've said for a month's long time this Age of Aquarius is about taking the best of the ancient lessons and learning and from the prior ages and bringing things forward in a very innovative modern way. So
right. And I just noticed Uranus is 7 degrees.
seven,
Yeah.
yes.
It's, it's our inner wisdom. We talk about the strategy is so important. What is our inner wisdom calling us to do? What are we visualizing? What are we envisioning? What are we prepared to give up to have something different? And that's part of it. I think the coronavirus certainly has given us that. Like whatever we were holding on to thinking it couldn't be different, the coronavirus has proved that yes, it can be different and it will be different. And regardless, people who are going, I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to do that or it doesn't exist. It's like, yeah, you can have whatever story you want to, but how is that serving you? Is that a strategic thought that's going to help you go forward? Or is it just going to drag you backwards and keep you stuck going round and round, going, well, I will be right, I will be right. But yeah, you may be right, but you may be dead or left behind and ostracized. And that's the thing, right?
And
What ostracizes us?
and that's part of the Gemini moon itself and the North Node in Gemini on this full moon. Gemini is about being open, learning new things, listening to new ways. It's about just allowing yourself to be open to these new perspectives instead of, shutting down and saying, well, no, that can't be right. We can't do it that way. We can't possibly do that. The more you can stay open to learning and taking on new perspectives, the easier you will move through this period, to be quite honest. So
Absolutely. And I think what's so important, given the numbers, the nines we talked about, is having compassion and gentleness for your fear and for your wanting to stay stuck, because that makes sense. We want to stay in what we know, but the world is not letting us. So, what's going to make it easier, right?
Yeah.
What will help you move from stuck to moving in the right direction, right? Going backwards, at some point, you're just going to exhaust yourself, and it doesn't do you any good, because
Yeah.
you know you can't hold back time. You're talking about Saturn, which is about time, like,
And
right?
we were born for this time. Well, we were, or we would not be here.
Right. We chose to come here.
Yeah.
So this is, again, this whole Gemini thought, mind, whatever, Gemini, Uranus, whatever, this Aquarian energy of opening is thinking about what it is we want to do right now that
Mm.
will help us move into this new age with grace and with ease, as opposed to, battling our way through it. This idea of being in rebellion that so many of us have done so well for so long is, it's great. It feels great, but it actually doesn't get you anywhere. It's just like you're just running in the same space, getting nowhere, proving a point to no one, right? So it's like, yeah, you can do that if you want. I think it's really important for people not to get hooked up into that, like that people are doing that, people they know, people they're concerned about. Why are these people doing it, and what can we do about it?
Mm.
Is we can understand that they are choosing something, but we don't need to fix it for them. Like, the best way to change the world is to live the example you want to kind of share in the world. It's energetic. It's just like these people we've been talking about, AOC and the squad and all these people.
Mm.
They're living what they believe in. They're putting their money where their mouth is. They probably have fears. We know they get threats from crazy people and all kinds of stuff, and they certainly have horrible things said about them, but that doesn't stop them, right? So those are such great examples of, you can have compassion for people that are in fear, but you don't need to do anything to make sure they come along with you. You can just, it's not closing your eyes, it's being aware, but it's not getting hooked into, oh, these people are stopping us.
Yeah, exactly. So I do want to, before we do anything else, we've been asked by a little bird called Piers to wish his wife, Catania, a very happy birthday for November the 27th. Her birthday's just before this eclipse, so she's going to have a very big birthday here. So happy birthday, Catania, from myself and Jen, and from your lovely husband, Piers, who took the time to ask us to do this.
Right. Happy birthday. Have an amazing, amazing experience.
Yeah. So are we ready for the symbols, or do we want to say anything else about this chart, do you think? I don't know if I've got much else to say.
Mm.
Just overall for me, I feel this real shift, but they're gonna then, of course, all these lunations hit my chart majorly because I've got a Gemini moon and Sagittarius stellium, major planets in Sagittarius, so I'm really feeling the shift, and it's a big change. And I hope, our listeners are feeling this underlying sense of optimism, even though there's still this major chaos as things start to fall apart. Underlying that, there's this potential, this kind of a sense of an initiation as well. I think we're going through initiation into a new way of being, and I just hope people feel it like we do. So.
Right. Such important points. I will say the thing that's been catching my eye is Vesta at 13 degrees. And I think that's important because of the 13 and the fact that this is the fire keeper, or the flame of our passion, the thing with the hearth, the heart, a lot of what we've been talking about. And in terms of that being connected to this idea that there is transformation, and through transformation is death.
Yeah.
And part of death is giving up the things we may have been clutching onto, hoping they would change, hoping people would get better or they would understand or things like that. Um, which is just a complete waste of energy. So if you're lighting your fire and you have only one match or this amount of attention, which of course all of us have to, we're all busy people, then what are you lighting the fire for? One of the things, like as Lou talks about this idea of feeling that optimism, is my kind of puzzlement at why people are creating a reality they don't want. Like people talking about, for instance, Trump. He's a great example, and I bring him up because of what's happening in the US right now, where he's not conceding, etc., blah blah blah, and all of those things. And we can think about that in terms of something negative and polarizing and fixate on it, or we can have a different vision, like hold the vision that it's all going to work out. It's all fine. Let me just do what I need to do, and not create a vision around something we don't want, making more difficulty. Just putting the energy to, you know what, it's going to work out. It's all going to be fine. And this is how it's going to go, right? And this is my part in this. And part of that for all of us as a collective is holding the vision of the things we want. That isn't ignoring what's going on. It's just changing a tiny little focus of, and the words we use and how we think about it and what we talk about and focus on.
It's
Choose.
changing your perspective. The Gemini North Node again.
Right.
When Trump was elected, I said he's playing his part. He is representing a part of ourselves that has to change, you know? So,
Right. And he has changed us.
yeah,
And now that he's done his job, we have to move our focus
yeah.
away from him and the idea that he's going to create more chaos, and move to the idea of what is it we are strategizing or visualizing or moving towards, and gather that energy and work to it. Because yeah, we can hold on to hope and know that it's optimistic and there's things we need to do, and we still need to take action, right,
Oh,
based on our belief.
people
Or
need
we
to run for office, or we need to, whatever your part is. I'm not saying, of course, everybody can't run for office, but we need people. We need all the people to come together, whether it's, forming a local community thing, or, using your astrology to spread the word, or your Akashic record connection with your Akashic masters to spread the word. We've all got our part in this. All of us people have to come together and play our part, like pieces in a puzzle, like those patterns all coming together. Really, that I've talked.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's what's funny. I was talking about Scooby-Doo on my
Ah,
thing. That was coming, the pattern of Scooby-Doo's. Remember when we used to do that? One of the things that's so key into what Lou's saying here, and talking about the numbers that we pulled, the cards, the 22 and the 20, and the vision, is what you do can be living the passion, going to the place, doing the thing you need to do, working in your garden. It doesn't have to be something that other people can see.
mm.
It's still beneficial, because when you're doing that with optimism, with strategy, with hope, you are sending that energy out into the world. And that's what counts, is optimism from each of us actually reverberates into the world, just like fear. And so what is it that we want to activate? So by doing things we love, by activating that, lighting that fire inside of us, we actually get to spread more optimism and more hope and all of those things by just being ourselves, as opposed to locked in fear about what other people are doing.
And to go back to that Vesta that Jen mentioned at 13 Virgo, she's also devotion, and in Virgo it's the sign of service to others. And this does not mean going into servitude and depleting yourself, but this means true service. So if you are truly, what Jen said, living your passion, doing it, you're kind of adding to that collective service to humanity, to all of us together. So,
Right, right. And it's a great point. And this month as well is about doing contribution. Is a great way to look at it, as opposed to like serving, right?
Yeah.
If that makes it easier, you're contributing. What's your contribution? So your contribution could just be doing what you love, because that's spreading the word, right? That this is what's good. We should all be doing what we love, right?
It does have a definite feeling of doing something a little bit more useful, though. We're moving away from, the time where it's just, the greed is good kind of energy of all aspiring to have like all these toys and these mansions, and we're
Mm.
really moving away from that time. So, yeah,
Right. Well, the 20th century is 21st century, I should say, is about the people. The
yeah,
20, it's about contributing to the whole, to the collective.
yeah,
And so, what if we recognize, and certainly that ties into the nines, if we recognize that we are a part of the collective, that we are part of the greater whole, then how will we make the whole better?
yeah,
Right? Because
exactly.
we all benefit. And so that's kind of how to think about it. It isn't like you shouldn't be who you are, because you should be more truthful to yourself, but also contributing from a place of honesty and moving away from that whole Ayn Rand or Ayn Rand stuff that so
Ether.
destructive.
Oh, yeah, it really is. This concept of sovereignty is a real thing. We are sovereign beings. We get to choose everything, but it's been pushed too far. It's like sovereignty is like me first. I do whatever I want, and no matter what other people think. In some
Well, I think,
in some places, it has. So
right. Well, I actually think that, it's confusing, because the truth is, I agree with all of those things. The difference is when you look at things like Ayn Rand, what they're saying is most people are stupid. And so we're just going to use them, which is a very different from I'm going to do what's right for me. And I'm going to tell you that you're crossing boundaries, etc. Like the honesty of being real and going, okay, is this taking away from the bigger picture? Or, but I believe that if we truly understand we are great beings, and that by us living from a place of love, we contribute. But
oh,
when we're
I
doing things,
was, yeah,
right?
I was
Yeah, I
I
know.
was thinking more of the anti-maskers and the virus hoaxers and things that are rampant at the moment. The QAnon believers, they're
Right,
all like, "Well, it's my freedom. I do what I want." They say I live amongst them in Utah, so
right, right. And the big picture there is, because I've asked in the records about it, it's like, yeah, this is so annoying. But in the records, it's like they're doing their part. Like this is the disease of that mix up of what it means to be a sovereign being. Because to me, when I talk about being sovereign, or when we talk about being a queen or something like that, there's a huge responsibility, right? To that, like to yourself and to the environment you're in. And when you leave that part out, then it's meaningless, right? You're just running around like a little kid going, I want what I want. And it's like, okay, well, if you want what you want, then you have to create that, right? You have to work to it, because you can't have it both ways. You can't have all the stores open and whatever, blah, 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 whatever they want that makes no sense. It's like
yeah,
they wanting everything. They basically want somebody to serve them.
they
But
really do. Yeah.
sovereign beings, there's no one to serve you. You're going to have to serve yourself, right? So that's the part that they will have to realize. And that's the part we have to realize. Like, we're not here to fix them,
Hmm.
right? But
And
we can't stop them from expressing.
that comes back to that Leo Aquarius polarity again that
Right.
keeps being highlighted again and again. We can't have Aquarius without the Leo, and Leo is the ruler, it's the sovereignty, it's following your own heart, but it's doing it for that opposite point, bringing it in together, which is the good of the whole. So,
Right. And I think that these people that are doing all these things are really showing us the kind of the weakness or the emptiness of that kind of doing
exactly,
whatever I want, right? That it's
exactly my point. Yeah.
so there is a value. Like we got to know, instead of hiding or pretending that, oh, this, we don't do that. Yeah, we do it because we feel insecure. Those people are doing it because they don't feel loved or heard, right? But it's kind of like being in Leo, out of control, right? And then we also have the Aquarian, out of control, the ones that want to to make everyone follow a path because,
A
you
very
know,
authoritarian.
right, because they think they know best. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of that Ayn Rand stuff. I
yeah,
know best. You're an idiot. You don't know anything, so I can cheat you or I can tell you what to do. And
I'm very
those are the
grateful to
extremes.
say I've never read Ayn Rand.
I read a long time ago, and I actually enjoyed her book when I was very young. So, but
Yeah.
I couldn't read it now. But very strange. She's a fascinating figure. I think her energy is triggered by some of these movements that we've been having in the last couple of years, and it's such a good example of great ideas gone south because they just didn't have the human, that emotional component of compassion
Mhm.
and understanding, right? It's just like, oh, I'm better than you, I'm superior, I have a superior mind, so I can do whatever I want. And that includes imprisoning people or making them work for me and abusing the system, right?
Exactly. All righty. Symbols?
Yes, indeed. Am I going first?
Yeah, you go first.
All right. So, Gemini at 9 degrees, a quiver filled with arrows. The keynote, people's aggressive relationship to natural life as a basis for survival and conquest. The bow and arrows represent symbolically people's ability to extend the scope of their conquest of nature and to kill enemies in order to build a larger base for the collective development of a culture and an organized society. So, what's implied with the arrow is the piercing of a target. The mind of people is essentially a trance piercing power. It goes through the object towards it is aimed. It seeks to go through and beyond the obstacles on its path, and this usually implies the destruction of the obstacle. At a higher level, as in the Zen practice of archery, the obstacle is the ego. So it's the instinctual drive of the limiting power of the ego called conquest.
And the conquest of our outer nature. Yeah. And I love that it's an arrow and that the sun is in and the south node is in Sagittarius on the releasing end. So we're releasing the arrow pointing to where we want to go. So, yeah,
Right.
I love this symbolism. At first, it confused me. I was like, oh, it's talking about conquest. We don't want to attack people. But no, we get the point now. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And my symbol, the Chandra symbol, is wild flowers growing around the ruins of a temple, catching a second wind, taking a booster rocket from one cycle to another, one lifetime to another, one whole stage in evolution to another, shot out of a cannon to discover the next great thing. You are wildly attentive to signs and portents, looking for a way to the future, coming out of immense soul experience with flying colors leaping forth into the new. Enthusiastic, naive, and impressionable, eager for 1,000 universes to come true. You feel that ultimate springtime quality of fresh immediacy and wind-blown alacrity, just sensing all through the body and soul the possibilities, the openings, what wants to happen next. A destiny bearer, universal in spirit and in the right place at the right time for remarkable synchronicities and huge turnarounds. I just love that symbol. It's like, and just the words, the wildflowers growing around the ruins of a temple, reminds me of what's being flowered out of the old structures of our society, starting to really collapse, the structures of the patriarchy, for want of a better word. And it just fills me with optimism, this symbol too. So
The potential that wildflowers will continue to seed no matter what.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And that it even says we're moving from one cycle to another and a lifetime to another. It's like you. can't make this stuff up in light of what we've been talking about with the ages.
Right, right. And I think both symbols speaking very much to what we addressed
Yeah,
in the
definitely. They've
moon.
got very forward movement as well and vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that fierce compassion that is needed for this time.
absolutely. All right, so before we just tell you where we can find us, I just want to remind you again about the free call, November the 25th. You can find details on Instagram or on our Facebook page, Weirdly Magical, our Patreon, patreon.com/ Weirdly Magical. And again, happy birthday to Catania. So, and Jen, how can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, jenduchenne.com, JenDuchene. I also have a Facebook page, Jen Duchenne, Global Guardian of the Akashic Records. And I also have a group. I'm on Instagram and yeah, you can find my cards, the Illuminating Journey cards, on my website. And I also have classes. I teach classes, and I have a YouTube channel, Jen Duchenne, Global Guardian of the Akashic Records. And I do classes, teaching, and that is on my website. And I have a new class coming up at the beginning of the year. Independence, a traveler's guide. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me.
Okay, and I am Louise Eddington, LouiseEdington.com, and Cosmic Owl Astrology is my business name. That's on Instagram, my Facebook page. I have a group called Cosmic Owl Astrology Cafe. I offer readings, consultation style or pre-recorded astrology readings, and what else? Oh, my books, my 2 books. You can find the links to those on my website also, but they're Complete Guide to Astrology and Modern Astrology. I'm going to be speaking at a couple of events coming up in the new year, and I'll talk more about that later. And I am going to be launching my Cosmic Owl Astrology School in the new year. And I was planning on doing it in 2020, but 2020 happened and I did not. It just didn't feel right. And now it feels right as we move into the mutation into air signs and into Aquarius energy. So, yeah, so perfect. So for now, it's good. Oh, don't forget to leave us what's the word on
Reviews.
reviews. Please leave us reviews on our Facebook page or on iTunes or anywhere where you can leave reviews. And I could not So for now, it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.